The space station hung like a silver star against the black sky. Inside, Lieutenant Dae-ho Kim sat at his desk, watching the screens in front of him. His job was simple but important. Listen for messages from ships traveling through space. Dae-ho took a sip of his coffee and stretched his arms. The night shift at Proxima Station was usually quiet. As Earth's farthest outpost, they rarely got exciting news. Most days, he just logged regular reports from passing ships and sent weather updates. Another boring night, he said to himself, leaning back in his chair. Then his screen lit up with a red light. An emergency signal. Dae-ho sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. He pressed a button to hear the message. "This is breaking up. Attack." The voice came through broken and unclear. Dae-ho quickly adjusted some settings, trying to make the signal stronger. "This is Proxima Station receiving your distress call. Please repeat your message." The voice came through clearer this time. "This is Captain Sunmi Park of the Earth Diplomatic Corps, aboard the Illyrian research vessel Starlight." Her voice sounded steady, but Dae-ho could hear loud noises in the background. "We are under attack by unknown ships. The Illyrian delegation is in great danger. We need help right away." Dae-ho's heart beat faster. The Illyrians were one of the oldest alien species in the Galactic Confederation. They looked like tall, walking crystals and were known for their peaceful ways. They had been among the first to welcome humans to the Confederation 3 years ago, even when other aliens were afraid of them. "Captain Park, what is your location? How many attackers?" Dae-ho asked, already sending an alert to his commander. "Sending our position now," Sunmi replied. There were loud crashes in the background. "At least 7 ships. They came out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't see them until they were right on top of us." Dae-ho heard someone shouting in the background. Sunmi's voice grew more urgent. "The Illyrian ambassador has critical information about a threat to the entire Confederation. We cannot let them fall into enemy hands." "Repeat, the ambassador has." The message cut off suddenly. Captain Park, do you copy?" Dae-ho tried to reconnect, but there was only silence. The door to the communication room slid open, and Captain Ji Woo-song walked in. She was the commanding officer of Proxima Station, a tall woman with short black hair and a serious face. "Report, Lieutenant," she said. "Captain, I just received an SOS from an Illyrian research vessel. They have a human diplomat on board, Captain Sunmi Park. They're under attack by unknown forces." Dae-ho pointed to his screen. "I have their coordinates." Captain Song looked at the map display. The blinking red dot was far from any major space routes. "How long would it take Confederation peacekeepers to reach them?" she asked. Dae-ho checked the database. The nearest Confederation fleet is in the Vega sector. "At top speed, 3 weeks." Captain Song's face grew grim. "And our ships?" "Admiral Lee's training fleet is conducting exercises near Ta City. They could be there in 2 days." Captain Song began pacing the small room. This was a difficult situation. The Galactic Confederation had strict rules about military actions. Human ships weren't supposed to act alone without permission from the Confederation Council. Many alien species were still nervous about humans. Most aliens in the Confederation evolved on gentle planets with mild weather, low gravity, and few dangers. They built beautiful, peaceful societies, but never developed the physical strength or survival instincts the humans had. Earth, by contrast, was classified as a death world, a planet with high gravity, extreme weather, dangerous animals, and challenging conditions. Humans were stronger, faster, and more resilient than most aliens. They could survive in harsh environments that would kill other species. This made many aliens afraid of them. "If we send human ships alone, we might cause a diplomatic problem," Captain Song said, thinking out loud. "But if we do nothing, the ambassador dies, along with Captain Park and the Illyrian crew." Dae-ho nodded. "And the ambassador has important information about a threat to the Confederation. Captain Song stopped pacing and made her decision. Contact Admiral Lee immediately. Send him the coordinates and the full distress message. Yes, Captain, Daho said, fingers already moving across his control panel. And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we are declaring Code Deathworlder. Daho looked up in surprise. Code Deathworlder was only used in the most serious emergencies, situations so dangerous that human physical advantages were needed regardless of political concerns. Code Deathworlder. Yes, Mom, he replied, opening a secure channel to Earth. On the other side of the communication room, another officer spoke up. Captain, I'm getting signals from nearby Confederation outposts. They picked up the emergency broadcast too. The Zentari representative is demanding to know what we're going to do. The Zentari were a cautious species that had always been suspicious of humans. Tell them we're assessing the situation and will respond according to Confederation protocols. Captain Song replied carefully. What about the Council? Should we wait for their authorization? Asked the officer. Captain Song's face hardened. By the time the Council finishes their debate, everyone on that ship will be dead. Sometimes you have to act first and deal with the consequences later. She turned back to Daho. Any response from Admiral Lee? Coming in now, Captain. Admiral Minho Lee's face appeared on the main screen. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Defense Fleet. Behind him, Daho could see the bridge of a large warship. Captain Song, Admiral Lee said with a nod. We received your message and the distress call from the Illyrian vessel. What's your position, Admiral? Captain Song asked. The fleet is battle-ready. 5 ships, the Indomitable, Valiant, Defiance, Sovereign, and Guardian. We can reach the coordinates in 46 hours at maximum speed. You understand what Code Deathworlder means, Admiral. The Council hasn't authorized this mission. There could be serious political fallout. Admiral Lee's expression remained calm. I understand, Captain. But we all took an oath to protect life, human or otherwise. The Illyrians have been our strongest allies in the Confederation. We won't abandon them. Captain Song nodded. Good luck, Admiral. We'll handle things on the diplomatic side. Try not to start a war. A small smile crossed the Admiral's face. We're just going to rescue some friends in trouble. The Earth Defense Fleet moves out immediately. The screen went dark. Captain Song turned to her communications team. Send a message to all Earth diplomatic channels. Tell them what's happening and why. Make it clear this is a rescue mission, not a military action. Daho finished sending the coordinates to the fleet, then sat back in his chair. In all his 3 years at Proxima Station, nothing this big had ever happened during his shift. Do you think they'll make it in time? He asked Captain Song. She looked at the star map, where the 5 dots representing Admiral Lee's fleet were already moving toward the distress signal. If anyone can, it's them, she replied. The Sovereign and Guardian are our newest ships, with the fastest engines ever built, and Admiral Lee is the best commander in the fleet. What about the attackers? We don't even know who they are. Captain Song's face darkened. Whoever they are, they're about to learn why Earth was classified as a restricted zone for thousands of years before we developed space travel. On her screen, a message came in from Earth Command. Code DEATHWORLDER authorized. All resources AVAILABLE to Admiral Lee. Rescue ILLURI and AMBASADOR ATA all coasts. Across the vastness of space, the Earth Defense Fleet jumped into hyperspace, their engines pushing to maximum power. Inside the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Lee gathered his officers. This is not just about saving the Illyrians or Captain Park, he told them. For 3 years, we've tried to show the Confederation that humans can be trusted. Today, we prove it by our actions, not our words. Commander Su Jin-yoon of the destroyer Valiant spoke up. What if it's a trap, Admiral? What if someone is trying to provoke us into breaking Confederation rules? Then we'll be smart about it. Admiral Lee replied, but we won't turn away from people who need our help. That's not the human way. As the fleet raced through hyperspace, Lieutenant Dae-ho Kim on Proxima Station continued monitoring all channels, hoping to hear again from the Illyrian ship. But there was only silence. The last hope SOS had been sent. Now, the Deathworlder fleet was on its way. Admiral Min-ho Lee stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the blur of stars streak past the view screen. His ship led 4 others through hyperspace. The destroyers Valiant, Defiance, Sovereign, and Guardian. Together, they made up the strongest human fleet in this part of space. Time to target, Admiral Lee asked. Lieutenant Hae-yun Kang checked her screen. 38 hours, sir. We're pushing the engines to their limits. Admiral Lee nodded. He was a tall man with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. In his 20 years with the Earth Defense Fleet, he had never broken the rules of the Galactic Confederation. Until today. Any more messages from the Illyrian ship? He asked. No, sir, Hae-yun replied. Nothing since the initial distress call. The Admiral frowned. That wasn't good. Either the ship's communication systems were damaged or something worse had happened. What do we know about the Illyrian vessel? He asked. Commander Ta Wu-choi, his second in command, brought up an image on the main screen. The Starlight is a research and diplomatic vessel, not built for fighting. It has light shields and no weapons. The ship on the screen looked beautiful but fragile. Like the Illyrians themselves, it was designed to impress, not to survive attacks. Its outer hull sparkled with crystal components that matched the crystalline bodies of its builders. And our human diplomat? Admiral Lee asked. Captain Sun Mi Park, Hae-yun said. Age 34. 5 years with the diplomatic corps. This was her 3rd mission with the Illyrians. The Admiral nodded. Send her file to my screen. I want to know who we're rescuing. As the fleet continued through hyperspace, messages poured in from across the Confederation. News of the human military response had spread quickly. Sir, we're getting calls from 17 different species, Hae-yun reported. The Zentari representative is demanding we turn back immediately. The Dorsian Council is threatening to file a formal complaint. And the Illyrians? Admiral Lee asked. They're requesting regular updates on our progress. No complaints from them. The Admiral smiled slightly. Keep me informed of any messages from Earth Command or the Illyrians. The rest can wait. On the destroyer Valiant, Commander Su Jin-yoon was preparing her crew for what might lie ahead. Unlike the flagship Indomitable, which carried diplomats and high-ranking officers, the Valiant was a pure fighting ship. Its crew trained constantly for combat. What do we know about the attackers? Asked her weapons officer, Jun-ho Park. Nothing, Su Jin replied honestly. No identification. No known signature. They appeared without warning and attacked a diplomatic vessel. That tells us they're either pirates or something worse. Pirates wouldn't attack an Illyrian ship, said the tactical officer. Too much risk for too little reward. The Illyrians don't carry valuable cargo. Su Jin nodded. Exactly. Which means this attack was about the passengers, not the ship. Specifically, the ambassador. Her officers exchanged worried looks. The Illyrian ambassador was one of the highest-ranking diplomats in the Confederation. If someone wanted to hurt the Confederation itself, killing an ambassador would be a good start. Prepare for combat scenarios, Su Jin ordered. I want all weapons ready the moment we exit hyperspace. Back on the Indomitable, Admiral Lee studied Sun Mi Park's file. She had an excellent record. Smart, brave, and good with different species. There was also a personal note. She had been one of the first humans to study with the Illyrians when Earth joined the Confederation. She would die to protect them. Admiral Lee said quietly to himself, let's make sure that isn't necessary. A call came in from Earth Command. Admiral Lee took it in his private office. Admiral, said General Jamin Kang, the head of Earth's military. The Confederation Council is in an uproar over your mission. We expected that, sir, Admiral Lee replied calmly. Yes, but it's worse than we thought. Some species are calling this the first step in a human takeover. They're saying we've been planning this all along. Admiral Lee shook his head. That's ridiculous. We're responding to a distress call, nothing more. You and I know that, General Kang said. But fear isn't logical. For 3 years, we've been carefully showing the Confederation that humans aren't a threat. This mission puts that at risk. With all due respect, General, what would you have me do? Let the Illyrian ambassador die. Let Captain Park die. What message would that send about humanity? There was a long pause before General Kang spoke again. The President has authorized your mission to continue. Save our people and our allies, Admiral. But try not to start an interstellar war in the process. Understood, sir, Admiral Lee said. After the call ended, Admiral Lee returned to the bridge. His officers were waiting for his orders. Nothing changes, he told them. Our mission remains the same. Rescue the Illyrian crew and Captain Park. 20 hours later, deep in hyperspace, Lieutenant Hei-Yun detected something unusual. Admiral, she called out, I'm picking up a strange energy signature ahead. Admiral Lee joined her at the scanner station. Can you identify it? No, sir. It's like nothing in our database. But it's huge, and it's directly in our path. The Admiral studied the readings. Whatever it was, they would reach it in less than an hour. Alert the fleet, he ordered. All ships prepare for possible contact. As they drew closer, the strange energy grew stronger. Finally, Admiral Lee made a decision. All ships, drop out of hyperspace, he ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with. The 5 human ships returned to normal space. What they saw made even the experienced bridge crew stare in shock. Floating in the emptiness between stars was a massive field of debris. Thousands of pieces of metal and crystal, some as small as a hand, others as large as a shuttle, spread across a vast area. Analysis, Admiral Lee demanded. Commander Tawu worked quickly. Sir, it appears to be the remains of several ships. At least one of them was Illyrian design. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Life signs. Admiral Lee asked quietly. Hei-Yun scanned the debris field. None detected, sir. But there's a lot of interference. Our sensors can't penetrate some of the larger pieces. The Admiral made a quick decision. Launch search drones. I want every piece of that debris scanned. And bring some of the larger fragments aboard for analysis. For the next 2 hours, the fleet carefully moved through the debris field. The search drones found parts of at least 3 ships, 1 Illyrian vessel, and 2 unknown ships of a design no one recognized. Sir, Hei-Yun called out suddenly. One of the drones found something. It's a rescue pod. Life signs. Admiral Lee asked, hope in his voice. 1 faint human biosignature. Bring it in immediately. The small rescue pod was pulled into the Indomitable's hangar bay. Medical teams rushed to meet it. When they opened the pod, they found Captain Sun-Mi Park unconscious but alive. Her uniform was torn and burned, and she had several injuries. The medical team rushed her to the ship's hospital. Admiral Lee waited anxiously for news. Finally, the chief doctor emerged. She'll live, the doctor reported. She has 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and plasma burns on her right arm. But she's strong. She's already asking to speak with you. Admiral Lee entered the hospital room. Sun-Mi tried to sit up when she saw him, but winced in pain. Stay still, Captain, the Admiral said gently. You're safe now. The ambassador, Sun-Mi said, her voice weak. Did you find the ambassador? Admiral Lee shook his head. We only found you. Can you tell me what happened? Sun-Mi closed her eyes, remembering. We were on a routine diplomatic mission. The ambassador was carrying important information back to the Confederation Council. Then these ships appeared out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't detect them until they were right on top of us. Who were they? Admiral Lee asked. Pirates. No, Sun Mi's voice grew stronger. They called themselves the Voidborn. They said they had returned to reclaim what was theirs. The Voidborn. The Admiral had never heard the name before. The ambassador recognized them. He said they were supposed to be extinct, wiped out thousands of years ago. Sun Mi grabbed the Admiral's arm. They wanted the ambassador. They knew he was carrying information about them. What information? Evidence that the Voidborn have been secretly destroying Confederation outposts for months. The ambassador discovered their plan. They're preparing for a full invasion. Admiral Lee's face grew grim. Where is the ambassador now? I put him in the last escape pod, Sun Mi said, just before the ship broke apart. His pod had a different emergency jump signature. He should have gone to the nearest Confederation outpost. Or he was captured, the Admiral said quietly. Sun Mi tried to sit up again. We have to find him. If the Voidborn get the information he's carrying. Rest, Captain, Admiral Lee said. We'll find him. As he left the hospital room, Admiral Lee gave new orders. Change of plans. We're not going to the original coordinates anymore. Start scanning for Illyrian escape pod signatures. And keep weapons hot. The Voidborn might still be nearby. The 5 human ships spread out, searching the darkness between stars for any sign of the missing ambassador. What had begun as a rescue mission was now something much more dangerous. They were hunting an enemy no one had seen for thousands of years. And somewhere out there, the Voidborn were hunting too. For 6 hours, the human ships searched for any sign of the Illyrian ambassador's escape pod. They found nothing but more debris. Admiral Lee was about to order the fleet to move to a new search area when Lieutenant He-Yun's console lit up with an alert. Admiral, I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it matches Illyrian emergency codes. Admiral Lee moved quickly to her station. Location. It's coming from the 3rd moon of that gas giant, He-Yun said, pointing to a large planet on the star map. But there's something else. I'm detecting 7 unknown ships near the moon. They match the engine signature of the ships that attacked the starlight. The bridge grew quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Voidborn found the ambassador first, Admiral Lee said grimly. How long until we can reach that moon? At maximum speed, 1 hour, Commander Tawu replied. Admiral Lee nodded. Alert the fleet. Battle stations. We're going in. Throughout the 5 human ships, alarms sounded. Crew members ran to their positions. Weapons systems powered up. Shields strengthened to maximum. On the destroyer Valiant, Commander Su-Jin gathered her officers for a quick briefing. The Voidborn have found the ambassador's escape pod, she told them. We don't know if the ambassador is still alive, but we have to assume he is. Our mission is to rescue him, and if possible, capture one of the enemy ships for study. What do we know about their weapons? Asked Junho, the weapons officer. Very little, Su-Jin admitted. From the debris we found, they appear to use some kind of plasma-based technology. Their ships are heavily armored but not very fast. So we hit them hard and fast, said the tactical officer. Get in, grab the ambassador, and get out. Su-Jin nodded. Exactly. The Indomitable will lead the attack. We'll provide cover from the sides. The Sovereign and Guardian will hang back to block any enemy ships that try to escape. As the human fleet approached the gas giant planet, they slowed down to avoid detection. Admiral Lee ordered all ships to use minimal power and stay hidden behind the planet's largest ring. Visual on target, He-Yun announced, putting the image on the main screen. The 3rd moon was small and rocky, with no atmosphere. On its surface, the 7 Voidborn ships had landed in a circle around what appeared to be the Illyrian escape pod. Strange figures moved around the pod, trying to open it. Magnify, Admiral Lee ordered. The image zoomed in. Now they could see the Voidborn clearly for the first time. They were tall, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They wore no spacesuits despite the moon's lack of air. Most strange of all, parts of their bodies seemed to fade in and out of view, as if they weren't fully in this reality. "What are they?" whispered Heian. "Something that shouldn't be here," Admiral Lee replied. He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships." When the channel was ready, Admiral Lee spoke clearly and firmly. "This is Admiral Lee. Our mission is to rescue the Illyrian ambassador and gather information about this new enemy. We don't know what we're facing, but we know what's at stake. The safety of the entire Confederation rests on the success of this mission." He paused, looking at the alien beings on the screen. "These Voidborn think that because they caught a research vessel by surprise, all species in the Confederation are easy targets. Today they learn about humans. Today they learn why Earth is classified as a death world." Throughout the fleet, human crews prepared for battle. Unlike most Confederation species, humans had evolved on a planet with high gravity, extreme weather, and dangerous predators. Their bodies were built to survive threats. Their minds were wired to fight when necessary. "Attack Plan Delta," Admiral Lee ordered. "Begin now." The 5 human ships burst from behind the planet's rings. They moved in perfect formation, their engines pushing to full power. The Indomitable led the way, with the Valiant and Defiance flanking it. The Sovereign and Guardian spray out wider, cutting off any escape route. The Voidborn ships seemed caught by surprise. They scrambled to return to their vessels, abandoning their work on the escape pod. "They're powering up weapons," Heian reported. "Fire first," Admiral Lee ordered. "Target their weapon systems only." The human ships fired in unison. Bright energy beams struck the Voidborn vessels. 2 enemy ships lost power immediately. A third spun wildly, its engines damaged. But the other 4 Voidborn ships managed to lift off. They fired back, their strange purple energy weapons cutting through space. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Lee shouted. The human ships broke formation, each moving in a different direction. Most of the enemy fire missed, but one shot hit the Valiant's port side. "Damage report," Commander Su-Jin demanded, steadying herself as her ship shook. "Minor damage to the outer hull," her engineer reported. "Shields holding at 82%. No casualties." Su-Jin nodded. "Return fire. Target the lead ship." The Valiant fired its main cannons. The shots connected with the largest Voidborn vessel, causing visible damage to its hull. On the Indomitable, Admiral Lee watched the battle unfold. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable, but the Voidborn ships had stronger weapons. "Sir," Heian called out, "the Illyrian pod is still intact on the surface. I'm detecting one life sign inside." "The ambassador is alive," Admiral Lee said. "We need to get to that pod." He turned to Commander Tau. "Prepare a rescue team. Use the stealth shuttle." While the battle raged in space, a small shuttle launched from the Indomitable's underside. It carried Commander Inho Park and 6 Marines in combat armor. The shuttle used the fight as cover, staying hidden as it descended to the moon's surface. "We're approaching the pod," Inho reported over the comm. "No Voidborn in sight." "Be careful," Admiral Lee warned. Their strange ability to fade from view could be some kind of cloaking technology. The shuttle landed 50 meters from the Illyrian escape pod. The Marines rushed out, weapons ready. They moved quickly across the rocky surface, their magnetic boots keeping them from floating away in the low gravity. When they reached the pod, they found its door partly cut open. Commander Inho looked inside and saw the Illyrian ambassador. Unlike humans, Illyrians looked like walking crystals. This one's crystal body had several cracks and was glowing very faintly. "Ambassador Talus," Inho called out, "we're here to rescue you." The crystal being turned slightly. "Humans, you came." The voice was weak but clear. "Yes, sir. We need to move quickly." 2 Marines helped the ambassador into a special container filled with the gases Illyrians needed to breathe. Then they started back toward the shuttle. Suddenly, one of the Marines shouted, "Contact! 3 o'clock." Several Voidborn had appeared out of nowhere, their bodies becoming fully visible as they attacked. They moved incredibly fast, despite the low gravity. "Fire," Inho ordered. The Marines' weapons fired special rounds designed to work in space. 3 Voidborn fell immediately, but more kept coming. "Get to the shuttle," Inho shouted. "Protect the ambassador." The team fought their way back, step by step. One Marine was hit by a strange purple energy weapon and fell. Inho grabbed the Marine's arm and dragged him along, refusing to leave anyone behind. Finally, they reached the shuttle. As they loaded the ambassador and the injured Marine inside, Inho contacted the fleet. "Admiral, we have the ambassador," requesting immediate covert fire for liftoff. "You've got it," Admiral Lee replied. "All ships, concentrate fire on the surface near the shuttle. Give them room to escape." The human fleet unleashed a barrage of weapons fire, forcing the Voidborn to take cover. The shuttle lifted off, racing back toward the Indomitable. In space, the battle had turned in humanity's favor. 3 Voidborn ships were completely disabled. 2 more had suffered heavy damage. Only 2 remained fully operational, and they were now trying to escape. "Don't let them get away," Admiral Lee ordered. "We need prisoners for questioning." The Sovereign and Guardian moved to block the escaping ships. They fired targeted shots at the engines, careful not to destroy the vessels completely. 1 Voidborn ship surrendered, powering down all systems. The other attempted a desperate move, accelerating directly toward the Valiant. "They're going to ram us," Su Jin shouted. "All power to forward shields." At the last second, she ordered a maneuver no non-human captain would have attempted. The Valiant rolled 90 degrees and accelerated, narrowly avoiding the collision. As the enemy ship passed by, the Valiant fired at point-blank range, disabling its engines. "Target neutralized," Su Jin reported to Admiral Lee. "No casualties on our side." The shuttle carrying the ambassador docked safely with the Indomitable. Medical teams rushed to treat both the injured Marine and the Illyrian diplomat. In the ship's medical bay, Admiral Lee met with Ambassador Talus. The Illyrian's crystal body had been treated with special healing compounds, but still showed signs of damage. "Thank you, Admiral," Talus said, his voice stronger now. "The Confederation owes you and your crew a great debt. We're just glad we found you in time," Admiral Lee replied. "Captain Park told us you have important information about the Voidborn." The ambassador's crystal body pulsed with light. "Yes, information that could save the Confederation, or doom it. The Voidborn were not extinct as our histories claimed. They have been hiding, planning, waiting for their chance to return." "Return from where?" "The void between galaxies," Talus said. "That is why we called them Voidborn. They can exist in the nothingness of deep space, and now they want revenge for their supposed banishment thousands of years ago." Admiral Lee looked out the viewport at the captured Voidborn ships. "Well, they picked the wrong species to start with. Today, they learned that humans fight back." The Illyrian ambassador's crystal body glowed with what humans had learned was their version of a smile. "Indeed, Admiral. Perhaps that is why the universe sent you to us when it did. The Confederation needs Deathworlders now more than ever." 2 days after the battle, the human fleet arrived at the Confederation Central Station. It was a massive space station where representatives from all member species met. The 5 human ships looked small next to the giant, beautiful vessels of other species. As the Indomitable docked, Admiral Lee could see the welcome party waiting for them. It wasn't the friendly greeting he had hoped for. Armed Confederation security officers stood in rigid lines. Behind them were representatives from at least 20 different species, their faces showing everything from fear to anger to curiosity. "This doesn't look good," said Commander Tawu, standing beside the Admiral. "We knew there would be consequences," Admiral Lee replied calmly. "We broke the rules. We saved the ambassador," Tawu pointed out. Admiral Lee nodded. "Yes, And now we have to explain why that was necessary. The Admiral led a small group off the ship. With him were Commander Tawu, Captain Sunmay Park, now recovered enough to walk, and Ambassador Talus. Behind them came 6 Marines escorting 2 Voidborn prisoners. The aliens were kept in special containment fields that prevented them from using their strange fading ability. The Confederation security officers stepped forward, hands on their weapons. Admiral Min-Ho Lee, said the lead officer, a tall blue-skinned alien. You and your crew are to surrender your weapons and follow us to the council chamber. Admiral Lee handed over his sidearm without argument. His officers did the same. The prisoners? The security officer asked, looking nervously at the Voidborn. They stay with my Marines, Admiral Lee said firmly, for everyone's safety. The officer hesitated, then nodded. The group was led through the station. As they walked, other aliens stopped to stare. Most had never seen a human in person before. Some had never seen a Voidborn at all. The council chamber was enormous, with seats for representatives of all 300 Confederation species. Today, it was completely full. The news of the human fleet's battle with the Voidborn had spread quickly. At the center of the chamber stood the High Council, the 12 oldest and most respected species in the Confederation. The Illyrians held one of these seats, but the others were filled with species known to be cautious about humans. Admiral Lee and his group were directed to stand in the speaking area. The Voidborn prisoners were placed in a secure containment field nearby. The head of the council, a Dorjan with flowing tentacles, spoke first. Admiral Lee of Earth, you stand before this council to explain your actions. You led a military fleet into Confederation space without authorization. You engaged in combat with an unknown species. You fired weapons in a peaceful sector. These are serious violations of our laws. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Admiral Lee stepped forward. Respected council members, 3 days ago, the Illyrian research vessel Starlight sent a distress call. They were under attack. The nearest Confederation peacekeeping force was weeks away. We were the only ones who could help in time. You could have requested authorization, the Dorjan countered. By the time such authorization would have been granted, everyone aboard the Starlight would have been dead, Admiral Lee said. The Zentari representative, a small green being with 4 eyes, spoke next. This is exactly what we feared when humans joined the Confederation. You act without thinking of consequences. You use violence as your first choice, not your last. Captain Sunma stepped forward. With respect, that is not true. I was on the Starlight when it was attacked. The Voidborn gave us no warning, no chance to surrender. They came to kill, not to talk. The chamber grew quiet. Many had not heard a first-hand account of the attack. And what of these? Voidborn? Asked another council member. Who are they? Why did they attack? This time, Ambassador Talus moved to the center of the speaking area. The Illyrian's crystal body still showed signs of damage, but glowed with inner light. The Voidborn are an ancient enemy of the Confederation, Talus said, his voice resonating through the chamber. Our histories say they were defeated long ago, but that was wrong. They have been hiding, growing stronger, planning their revenge. Talus projected images from his crystal body, records he had found showing mysterious attacks on remote Confederation outposts over the past year. Each of these incidents was blamed on equipment failure or natural causes, Talus continued. But I found evidence that they were Voidborn attacks. They were testing our defenses, learning our weaknesses. The council members looked at the images in shock. Is this why they attacked your ship? The Dorjan asked. Because you discovered their plan. Yes, Talus confirmed. They wanted to silence me before I could warn the Confederation, and they would have succeeded if not for the humans. The chamber erupted in worried conversations. The Voidborn threat was far more serious than a simple human rules violation. Admiral Lee waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. Council members, we understand that our actions broke the rules. But sometimes, rules must bend to save lives. We did what we believed was right, not just for humans, but for all species in the Confederation. The Dorjan head of the council studied Admiral Lee for a long moment. What would you have us do with these void-born prisoners? Question them, Admiral Lee suggested. Learn what they know about their people's plans, and then prepare. If the void-born are planning a full invasion, we need to be ready. And your fleet, what punishment do you suggest for yourselves? Admiral Lee stood tall. We will accept whatever the council decides. But know this, if faced with the same choice again, to follow rules or to save lives, we would make the same decision. The council members conferred among themselves. Finally, the Dorjan spoke again. Admiral Lee, this council needs time to discuss both your actions and the void-born threat. Please wait outside. Admiral Lee and his group left the chamber. For 3 hours, they waited while the council debated. When they were finally called back in, the mood had changed. The Dorjan addressed them formally. After careful consideration, this council has reached 2 decisions. First, regarding the human fleet's actions, while we cannot condone breaking Confederation law, we acknowledge the exceptional circumstances. Your ships and crews will not be punished, but Earth must agree to stricter oversight of its military vessels in the future. Admiral Lee nodded in agreement. Second, the Dorjan continued, regarding the void-born threat. The Council has declared a state of emergency. All Confederation species must prepare their defenses. A special task force will be formed to study the void-born and develop strategies against them. The Dorjan paused, seeming uncomfortable with what came next. And the Council requests that humans take a leading role in this task force. A surprised murmur ran through the chamber. Humans? Admiral Lee asked, making sure he had heard correctly. The Illyrian representative's crystal body glowed brightly as he spoke. Yes, Admiral. For too long, many in the Confederation have feared humans because you evolved on a death world. They saw your strength, your resilience, and your fighting spirit as dangerous. The Illyrian gestured toward the void-born prisoners. But now we face an enemy from beyond our galaxy, an enemy that thrives in the void between stars, an enemy that does not understand mercy or peace. He turned to face the entire chamber. Perhaps this is why the universe brought humans to us now. Perhaps we need the qualities of Deathworld species to survive what is coming. The chamber was quiet as everyone considered this idea. Admiral Lee stepped forward. The Earth Defense Fleet is at the Confederation's service. We will help however we can. Over the next few days, news of the void-born threat spread throughout the Confederation. At first, there was panic. But then, something unexpected happened. Species that had always feared humans began to see them differently. Captain Sun Mai noticed the change first. As she walked through the station, aliens no longer moved away from her. Some even nodded in greeting. They don't seem afraid of us anymore, she said to Admiral Lee. Fear changes when there's something worse to be afraid of, he replied. But it's more than that. They've seen that humans will risk their lives to protect others. That matters. On the final day before the fleet was scheduled to return to Earth, Admiral Lee received a message from the Confederation Council. Earth had been granted an expanded role in Confederation defense. 5 more human ships would join the Special Task Force, and all restrictions on human military technology would be lifted. As Admiral Lee prepared to leave, Ambassador Taylor came to say goodbye. My people have always been among those most concerned about Earth joining the Confederation, the Illyrian admitted. We feared what we did not understand. That's natural, Admiral Lee said. Perhaps, Taylor replied, but it was also wrong. The very qualities we feared in humans, your strength, your quick decisions, your willingness to fight, these saved my life, and perhaps the entire Confederation. The Illyrian's crystal body glowed with respect. The Voidborn thought they chose their target well. They knew the Confederation would respond slowly, following all the proper procedures. They didn't count on humans being in the neighborhood, Admiral Lee said with a small smile. Indeed, They will not make that mistake again. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking out at the stars. A message came in from Earth Command. The defense fleet was being expanded. More ships were being built. Training with Confederation species would begin immediately. The message ended with simple words: Operation Deathworlder Shield authorized. Humanity stands ready. Admiral Lee thought about how quickly things had changed. For years, humans had hidden their true strength to make others comfortable. Now, that strength was seen as necessary. Do you think they'll ever truly accept us? Captain Sunmay asked, joining him by the viewport. They don't need to fear us or accept us, Lee replied. They just need to understand that being from a death world doesn't make us dangerous to friends. It makes us dangerous to enemies. On Earth, shipyards that had been quiet began working day and night. The Deathworlders were unleashing their full potential, not to conquer, but to protect. The SOS that had started it all had done more than save a single ambassador. It had changed the course of galactic history.